My wife is filing for divorce because her friends like being with rich men, and she wants to try that life. But now that she is looking to get back, I'm telling her that we don't need her with the kids. About 7 months ago, Emma, my ex-wife, aged 42, and I, aged 44, moved because of her new job. She had been offered a senior management position at a company she had applied to without my knowledge. The reason she did that was because she knew I would never agree to move. We had been together for 12 years, married 10, and we have 8-year-old twins. Both our families are here, and a few years ago, my father was diagnosed with leukemia. Since then, it has been very hard on our family because my father's health has not been good, and we always fear the moment we might lose him. Naturally, as his only child, I wanted to be here for him and also for my mom. Therefore, I didn't want to move. After my father's diagnosis, I thought Emma would understand what was going on, but instead, she told me I was being oversensitive, and that I couldn't keep turning down job opportunities out of state and expect her to do the same just because my dad was ill. Before my dad got ill, in fact, we had been planning to move because she wanted a change of pace. But after my dad's diagnosis, I told her that it would no longer be possible for me. She tried to understand at first, but gradually, over the last year or so, she started to feel very restless, and we had been fighting about this quite a bit. She wanted to move out because she felt stuck here, and I couldn't think of moving out while my dad was in such a condition, especially as it would also mean having to leave my mom to deal with everything on her own. Even if I had had siblings, I couldn't have left because my good conscience wouldn't have allowed me. I tried to explain that to Emma, but she refused to see my point of view, and I felt that she was being selfish, whereas she felt that I was the selfish one. Then earlier this year, one day she came home from work and told me that she had applied for a well-paying position with a company out of state and that she got the job. That shocked me, and I wanted to be happy for her, but I just couldn't because she hadn't told me anything about this application or this job. I was somewhat in shock, so I just congratulated her and didn't say anything that day. I remember us having an argument because she didn't think I was happy enough for her. Even though it was a big deal, I must admit it was a good job with decent pay. However, it upset me that she didn't even think that she needed to talk to me about it before applying. She told me that she didn't even think she would get the job, but now that she had it, she was thinking of moving out and wanted me to come with her. She wanted to relocate our whole family, knowing what my feelings were on this. So we ended up fighting about it, and it was one of our worst fights. It got so bad, she ended up going to stay with her parents for a couple of days, and we had no contact for those days. I actually thought that she was going to file for divorce and end it. But then she came back home, and we ended up deciding that we were going to try and work things out between us because we still had the kids and we couldn't let them down. At that point, I thought that I could still work it out with her because I didn't want to leave this marriage. I was sure that I loved her, and she told me that she loved me back too, so that she wanted it to work. But she also didn't want to give up on her dreams. So after a lot of discussions, we decided that she would take the job and I would stay here. She told me that she would try to travel back and forth as often as she could so that we could make this work. We had no other option but to opt for a long-distance marriage. For now, since neither of us was ready to give up on the other, it was hard for me to accept, but I had to do it.
At least for a while until we could decide what we wanted to do in the future. Then she left and started coming home every other weekend. Even then, she could only spend 2 days with us and catch a flight back on Sunday afternoons as she had to be back for work on Mondays. It was tiring for her. And she knew this, but There was nothing she could do as she had already agreed to this arrangement. Over time, I guess she started to resent me, and her attitude towards me got worse. We had promised each other that we would try and make this work, but whenever I would try to call her during the week, she would always be really mean to me, and we would end up arguing about something. It got to the point where it seemed like she didn't even want to talk to me. Instead, I started waiting for her to call me first, and then we started talking less and less. Even when we did talk, it was always very cold and weird, and I didn't know what to think about it. Finally, after being away for almost 4 months, she came home one weekend and came with divorce papers. At this point, things were really strained between us. She told me that she couldn't. When she came back that weekend, we hadn't spoken for almost days straight because of the argument we had the last time we spoke. I wanted to find a reason not to get a divorce, but I couldn't think of anything because the last fight we had was when she actually threw out the idea of separating us and ending the marriage for good. I should have seen this coming for months. Not only had we been fighting, but she had also been getting close to a friend from high school. This friend, let's call her Melissa, wasn't a nice person and was an even worse influence. Emma had always been good friends with Melissa, and that woman had even been a bridesmaid at our wedding. But I had never liked her, because she always gave off a weird vibe. According to what I knew about her, she was a total gold digger and would always go after rich married men so she wouldn't have to compromise with them, but still get the benefits of being with a rich man. She would even brag about it, as if what she did wasn't detestable enough. When I used to mention her behavior to Emma, she used to tell me that it was her personal choice and we shouldn't judge her. That was quite irritating, so I eventually just stopped talking about Melissa and decided to ignore that friendship completely. It eventually got easier because after Melissa moved out and Emma got busy with work and the kids grew apart a bit. Anyways, I knew that Melissa had also been living in the same state with her son for a couple of years since she had moved away after her second divorce, probably to look for new prey. Coincidentally, when Emma got a job in the same state, she got in touch with Melissa, who was the one who introduced her to the city and helped her move and all that. I was hoping that maybe Melissa had toned down after all these years, but she was still the same weird person. I didn't feel comfortable with Emma being so close to Melissa once again, but she was the only friend Emma had there, so I couldn't even say anything about it. In the months that Emma had been there, she had told me that Melissa had been very supportive of her since she was on her own, and that she had even introduced her to a couple of her own friends. This group of people that Melissa had introduced Emma to was pretty weird because, from what I remember, it was a group of 3 or 4 women who were all single mothers met through Facebook, and they had a kind of support group on the platform, according to what Emma had told me. These women had been with men and had children with them, but due to various reasons, their partners had abandoned them, and now they were raising their children alone. The only support they received was child support, without.
However, it wasn't as sad as it sounds, because most of the women that Melissa got along with were like her. They had gone after very rich men, had affairs with them, got pregnant, and then when these men decided to stay with their wives and families, these women managed to get paid a large amount of alimony that sustained their lifestyle. In reality, it wasn't just support for them, but payment to keep their mouths shut, as I guess these men didn't want their affairs to reach their wives. It was very common for all of them to have some online business that no one was really interested in, but they were self-employed and wanted people to believe that they were doing it all on their own. In reality, they were running a scam and were proud to call themselves independent women who had all the freedom in the world to live by their own rules while living off the money of men who had been dumb enough to fall for their tricks. Emma found it amusing, but I found it disgusting and didn't think it was a good idea for her to socialize with them. However, she would still defend her friends and tell me that she had met them in person and that they were all really nice women. Since we were already fighting about so many things, I didn't want to fight either, so that's why I didn't say anything. But then in the last fight we had before she filed for divorce, she told me that she really admired Melissa's strength because even without any man's help, she was raising her 2 kids brilliantly on her own.
I ended the call dismissively and told her that anyone who earned that much money from getting pregnant after flings with rich men was probably taking good care of the children, since they weren't their children but a lottery ticket to them. This led to a huge fight between us. Frustration had been building up for months, and that day, that tiny discrepancy was enough to trigger both of our anger. We started cursing each other out, telling each other exactly how hard we had tried to make it work, but unfortunately we just couldn't even manage it. Even the children, who we were supposedly together for, hardly ever saw us together, and when we were together, we weren't happy. So instead of letting them grow up in a toxic environment, we decided to get a divorce. The divorce process was relatively simple, as there is no period waiting in our state, and we just had to divide our joint assets, which was fairly straightforward. I kept the house and the kids, as she didn't want to take them with her at the moment, and she said for now we could just continue with the arrangement of her coming back here every week to see them. We had been sharing the cost of raising them anyways, so we continued to do that. Once they were a little older, we would let them decide what they wanted to do. It wasn't convenient for either of us, but we didn't want to fight over custody, as we believed our kids deserved both of us in their lives. As for the house, we had a verbal agreement that we would put it up for sale in a few years, and when it was sold, you would split the money. The divorce was finalized about a month ago, and I didn't think she would want to talk to me after that, because even while we were in the process of getting divorced, we barely had anything to talk about outside of meetings with our lawyers. Now that everything was finalized, I was just trying to cope, even though it really seemed like nothing had changed as we were still following the same routine. Life was definitely going to be quite different for me now that I was no longer married to Emma. My children were also very confused about what was going on, so I had to explain to them that their mother and I were no longer together. Although nothing had exactly changed, last night she decided to call me again so we could.
I'd apparently made a huge mistake and wanted to back out of the divorce. I could tell she'd been crying and was pretty hysterical. On the call, she started ranting about how she'd unintentionally idealized the lifestyle Melissa and her friends lived because of that group. She hadn't mentioned this to me before because she knew how I felt about Melissa, but after our last fight, she'd spoken to her group of friends and they told her to go for a divorce. Initially, she'd been skeptical, but they talked her into it. She then spoke to a lawyer that was recommended to her. But it's been a month since then, and she's tried literally everything to move on, like dating apps, blind dates, and going out almost every night, but she's only ended up hooking up. That has only made her feel pathetic, because at least she's been with me. Even when we were fighting, she knew she loved me, and I loved her. Now she's really alone and mostly misses the kids. Her friends told her this would pass, but she just can't shake the loneliness and guilt after the divorce. Plus, her company had been doing pretty well when it started. She joined, but she's had several pay cuts since then. They had apparently exaggerated how much good they were doing to get her into the company, and her current income doesn't match what she was initially offered. Not only her, everyone in the company has been through the same thing. They keep telling people things will get better if they keep working hard, but she thinks it's just to retain employees. That's another reason why she wants to get back with me. She said that she really wanted me to consider reversing the decision to divorce because she just misses her family and what her life used to be. But after she finished talking and explaining her situation to me, I felt furious with her because I couldn't believe that she had allowed her immoral friends to convince her. I warned her about Melissa and had made it very clear that I didn't like the company she was keeping after she moved out, but she never paid attention to me, and now they had turned out to be the reason why she ended up making the decision that she did. If it had been her mistake, I might have been understanding, but the fact that she had decided to listen to people that I hated really bothered me. The nerve of her to call me and start crying all over these things, as if it had all been very easy for me, just infuriated me. I ended up blowing up at her and told her that now she had to manage on her own because I wasn't going to help her.
Despite everything, I tried to do everything I could to make this marriage work. I'm not just talking about the last few months, but ever since my father became ill, I was fighting for our marriage relentlessly, and for a while she did too. But she had been incredibly selfish these past few years, and that's how we ended up here, divorced. The least she could have done while I was away was try and understand my feelings and my situation. Instead, she let herself be swayed by friends who she knew I didn't like. I told her that I wasn't a teenager anymore and that a juvenile excuse like her friends influencing her to make bad decisions wasn't going to work with me. No way she was coming home drunk to her parents. This was a very different situation, and it had affected my life and even the children. Now, just because it's uncomfortable for her, she wants to reverse the divorce. First of all, of course that doesn't work. And secondly, even if it did work, I wouldn't. I was really upset about everything she had said to me just before that. I just couldn't help myself. So I told her if she was feeling really alone and guilty, then she should ask her friends for help. I'm sure if they were the ones who encouraged her to file for divorce, they would care enough to help her if she's not doing well financially, but also support her emotionally. I was also really bothered by the fact that there was basically
Confessed that she had been having casual encounters with random people for the past month after our divorce. Technically, I was single, so I could do whatever I wanted, but it made me feel really uncomfortable and depressed because I felt like I had cheapened what we shared for the past 12 years. So I told her that I didn't want her back in my life, especially after the things she had just said to me, and that I was going to make sure the kids stayed with me because I wasn't sure if she was a good influence on them. She started crying more and told me that she was willing to do whatever it took to make things right, but I told her I had made up my mind and that I had to live with her and that the kids and I didn't need her anymore. Then I hung up and blocked her. When I woke up this morning, I had several messages from my ex-in-laws. They were telling me that I shouldn't have said the things that I said because she was already really depressed and that it wasn't nice of me to kick her when she was down. They said that it wasn't necessary because she was already regretting everything that she had done and seemed that I was trying to punish her more by telling her that the kids and I didn't need her anymore. I wouldn't have cared what my ex-in-laws said, but they've been really nice to me after the divorce. So, I don't know. Am I the bad guy for telling my ex-wife that I don't want her back and that the kids and I don't need her anymore? Update 1. Thank you so much for all the support you've shown me in the comments. I don't know how else to express it, but it really means a lot to me to know how many people are on my side through the situation. It means even more to me that so many of you have related to my story and reached out to tell me things are going to get better. It's really kind of you, and I know things are going to get better. It's been 4 days since I posted, and I blocked Emma after our conversation, so she hasn't been able to get in touch with me this weekend. She's supposed to be coming over to see the kids and spend some time with them, so I don't know what's going to happen then. For the past few months since the divorce was filed, she would just pick up the kids from my house and go to her parents' house to spend the weekend with them, occasionally spending some time here with the four of us for some family activities, but she mostly tried to stay away from me, and I was okay with that because it just made things easier for me. This weekend, however, it's uncertain. Actually, I'm kind of worried about having to see her because her parents have been really upset with me, and they've told me that the things that I said to them were so harsh that she's ended up crying every time they've called her since then. I haven't responded to any of their messages because I don't really know what to say, but I feel kind of bad because I know that Emma is a very unemotional person, and I managed to hit her in a sore place because she's been crying so much, even though she hasn't exactly been kind to me and our circumstances haven't been the best. I still feel really sad for her because we could have had a great life. I feel like she blew it all up herself. I did my best to make it work, but it's not like I could make the marriage work on my own without any help from her. I don't know what to say, to be honest. Update 2. Emma came over yesterday to pick up the kids, and we ended up having a conversation about everything that had been said. It was evident by her appearance that she was going through a very difficult time. You could see it on her face, and I found it very difficult to be cold with her.
She asked me if I would be willing to talk to her even if it was just for a little while, and I ended up agreeing. Once the children were in their room, we started talking. She told me that she was really sorry for everything, and not only referring to the recent months, but the last few years. It had taken her a long time to realize how selfish she had been,
That she had ultimately been and even said that she didn't deserve to be with me. She explained that in the last few weeks after the divorce, whenever she went out on a date or met up with some guy, all she could think about was how she wasn't sure if this was the life she wanted for herself. She felt guilty for throwing it all away. She had idealized him, but he wasn't as great as she thought he would be. By the time she realized this, it was too late, because she had already lost me. As she was talking, she started crying again, and I tried to comfort her, but she told me that it would only make her feel worse because it only made her realize what kind of person I was and how badly she had treated me. It was kind of bittersweet hearing her say these things about me because I would have really appreciated it when we were together, but now I'm not sure what to do with it. Anyways, after a while, she told me that she had decided to quit her job and move back here to be closer to her family. Also, she wanted to spend more time with the kids because she had already missed out on so much time with them. It wasn't worth staying away for so little money and sacrificing so much. The only request she had for me was not to file for full custody, like I said I could. I told her not to worry. I said it in the heat of the moment, but I had no intention of actually doing it, because both she and I had always taken good care of our children. I knew that they missed their mother, so spending more time with her would definitely do them good, and I would support her. After we finished talking, she apologized to me once again and told me that I was a good man. She also promised me that she would try to be a better mother and a better person. She thanked me for allowing her to talk to me. After everything that had happened, instead of just closing the door in her face, I was a little emotional, but I didn't say anything. Then she left with the kids. So that was it. I didn't expect things to turn out like this. I thought she was going to come and fight with me. But this was nice and unexpected. She has apologized, and I'm not going to say that I forgive her, and that's all in the past, but at least we're on the right path now. I don't think I could ever go back to her. That seems unrealistic, after everything that's happened. But the least we can do is try to raise our children in the best way possible, and make it as peaceful as possible for them, and, of course, it will be better for us too. Now, let's see what the future holds. Update 3. Well, it's been 4 months since my divorce, and after my last update, Emma has kept her word. Within a few weeks, she quit her job and moved back here. Since then, our children have been splitting their time between the two of them. They spend half the week at my house and the other half with their mom. And so far, it's been quite convenient for them. Emma was initially with her parents, but found an apartment a few blocks away. The children are having a great time with their 2 homes. Now, as for my ex-in-laws, we are back on normal terms. We don't speak regularly, but they apologized for upsetting me when Emma was going through her breakdown. They told me it wasn't my fault, but as her parents were really stressed out and ended up blaming me on a knee-jerk basis. Emma and I are back on good terms as well. I wouldn't say we're friends, but we are cordial and have kept things civil. I, too, am slowly moving on and trying to process everything. It's been going well so far, and I'm hopeful it will continue to improve. Update 4. It's been almost 7 months since my divorce, and I wanted to share a significant update. A couple of months ago, I met someone and we've started dating. She's a single mom, and her kids are close in age to mine, which I think can be pretty good. It's been good dating again, and I feel good in this relationship. My kids,
For your part, I think they'll be incredibly understanding. I've often been told that it would be okay if I started dating someone, that I didn't have to stay alone. Because of that, I've been seriously thinking about introducing them to my new girlfriend, as I think they'll handle it well, and it'll be a positive transition for everyone. They might even get along with my girlfriend's kids. However, this update is not only about that, but also something that's been happening with Emma. A few days ago, when Emma came to pick up the kids, she asked me to sit down. We sat in a living room while the kids were upstairs finishing getting her things ready. To my surprise, Emma told me that it's been a long time since our divorce, and now that we're getting along, she'd like to go on a date to see how things go. She explained to me that since she came back to the city, she hasn't gone out with anyone, And she also hasn't been in contact with Melissa or her other friends. For her, it would be a chance to see how she feels and if we could rekindle what we used to be. It was a little awkward from what I told her at first, and I didn't know how to tell her, but I finally told her that I had already met someone and that I was even thinking about introducing her to our children. Although we are both in a better place and get along well, I don't think it's a good idea to try a relationship again. Emma took it in stride and appreciated that I was honest with her, although she knew she was feeling a little hurt by all of this. But what is it? Even if I haven't met someone yet, I still maintain that giving the relationship a chance is a bad idea. Update 5. I wanted to give you all a little update on how things are going. Firstly, in regards to my dad, as many of you have been asking, he is still struggling with health issues, but I'm relieved to say he is slowly getting better. It has been a long and complicated process, but he is a fighter, and his improvement has given us all a little hope. In terms of my personal life, I recently introduced my children to my new girlfriend. I was a little nervous at first, but I'm very happy to say that they took to her quite well. They seem to get on well with her, and that has been a huge relief to me. Knowing that my children are comfortable and happy with this new dynamic gives me a lot of peace of mind. Plus, I recently had the opportunity to meet my girlfriend's children. We decided to have a BBQ at my house so that everyone could spend some time together in a relaxed atmosphere. It was an amazing day. The children got along very well, playing and laughing as if they had known each other forever. I am very happy with how things are progressing, both in my personal life and in my father's health. I am very grateful for everyone's support and good wishes.